Did you know that starting in 2026, major airports across the United States are implementing significant changes to their security screening procedures, boarding processes, accessibility services, and identification requirements that could directly affect every senior traveler aged 70 and older? And if you're not aware of these changes before you arrive at the airport, you could miss your flight, face unexpected delays, or find yourself in a situation where you're denied boarding entirely. These aren't minor tweaks or small adjustments that you can figure out on the fly. These are fundamental changes to how older travelers navigate the airport experience. Changes that have been quietly rolled out with very little publicity or public awareness, leaving millions of senior travelers completely unprepared for what they'll encounter the next time they try to catch a flight. Whether you're planning a vacation to visit family, traveling for medical reasons, going on a long-awaited dream trip, or simply flying domestically for any reason, if you're 70 or older, this video contains critical information that could mean the difference between a smooth, stress-free travel experience and an absolute nightmare at the airport. Welcome back to US Immigration Intel, your most trusted and comprehensive source for critical information about travel, immigration, airport regulations, senior travel rights, identification requirements, and everything that affects your ability to travel safely, comfortably, and confidently within the United States and internationally. I'm here today to give you a complete and detailed breakdown of all the significant airport changes happening in 2026 that specifically affect seniors aged 70 and older. I'm going to explain each change clearly, tell you exactly what you need to do to prepare, share important tips from travel experts and senior advocacy organizations, and make sure you have everything you need to navigate these new requirements without any stress or surprises. This video is absolutely essential for anyone over 70 who travels by air, for their adult children who help elderly parents travel, for caregivers who accompany seniors to airports, and for anyone who wants to understand their rights and options under the new airport regulations. Make sure you stay until the very end, because I will also share a complete checklist of everything you should do before your next flight, and important resources you can contact if you encounter problems. Don't forget to subscribe to US Immigration Intel and hit that notification bell so you never miss critical travel updates like this that could directly affect your next trip. Let's dive straight into the first and perhaps most impactful change that seniors need to know about. And this one affects virtually every traveler over 70 who goes through airport security. The Transportation Security Administration, known as the TSA, has implemented updated screening procedures for travelers aged 75 and older. And for 2026, these procedures are being extended and modified for travelers between the ages of 70 and 74 as well. The existing TSA pre-check program, which allows pre-approved travelers to go through expedited security screening without removing shoes, laptops, liquids, belts, or light jackets, has been specifically expanded for seniors. Under the new 2026 rules, travelers aged 70 and older who are enrolled in TSA pre-check will have access to dedicated senior lanes at major airports during peak travel hours, which are generally defined as 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon to 7 in the evening. These dedicated lanes move significantly faster than regular pre-check lanes and are staffed by officers who have received additional training in assisting elderly travelers, including those who use mobility aids, hearing aids, or other medical devices. However, and this is where many seniors are getting caught off guard, the eligibility requirements and the application process for TSA pre-check have changed significantly for 2026. Previously, anyone could apply for TSA pre-check by providing basic biographical information, undergoing a background check, and paying the application fee, which was currently $85 for a 5-year membership. Starting in 2026, TSA has introduced additional identity verification requirements that require applicants to present either a Real ID-compliant driver's license, a United States passport, or another TSA-approved identity document at an enrollment center in person. Many seniors who have older driver's licenses that are not Real ID compliant or who don't have current passports are finding that they cannot complete the TSA pre-check application process without first obtaining updated identification. This leads directly into one of the biggest issues affecting senior travelers in 2026, which I'll discuss in detail shortly. The second major change affects all air travelers, regardless of age, but its impact is particularly significant for senior citizens. The full enforcement of the Real ID Act requirements. After years of extensions and delays, the Real ID Act is now being fully enforced at all domestic airport security checkpoints across the United States. Starting in May 2023, a Real ID compliant form of identification became required for domestic air travel. But the enforcement has been ramped up significantly for 2026, with airports instructed to strictly deny entry through security checkpoints to travelers who cannot present acceptable identification. For seniors, this is creating major problems because many older Americans have driver's licenses that were issued before their state upgraded to Real ID compliant standards, or they live in states where the Real ID upgrade process has been complicated or confusing. A Real ID compliant driver's license can be identified by a gold or black star in the upper right corner of the card. If your license doesn't have this star, it is not Real ID compliant and will not be accepted for domestic air travel starting in 2026. If you're not sure whether your license is Real ID compliant, check it right now before you plan your next trip. The consequences of arriving at an airport with non-compliant identification are severe. You will not be allowed through the security checkpoint, you will miss your flight, and you may not receive a refund for your ticket. Your alternative options at that point are extremely limited. Essentially, you would need to present a US passport, a US passport card, a global entry card, a military ID, or another federally accepted form of identification. If you don't have any of these, you simply cannot fly that day. The third important airport change for 2026 that seniors need to know about involves significant upgrades and modifications to wheelchair assistance and accessibility services at major airports. The Department of Transportation has issued new regulations requiring airlines and airports to improve the quality, speed, and consistency of wheelchair assistance services for passengers who request them. On the surface, this sounds like entirely positive news, and in many ways, it is. But the implementation of these new regulations comes with some important changes to how you request and receive assistance that seniors need to understand. Under the new 2026 regulations, passengers who need wheelchair assistance or other accessibility services must request this assistance at least 48 hours before their scheduled departure time when booking or confirming their flight. Previously, you could request wheelchair assistance at the airport on the day of travel and generally receive it, though sometimes with a wait. Under the new system, airlines are required to pre-position wheelchair assistance based on advance requests. And while they must still make reasonable efforts to accommodate same-day requests, there is no longer a guarantee of immediate assistance for travelers who didn't request help in advance. Airlines that fail to provide pre-arranged wheelchair assistance to passengers who requested it in advance will face significant financial penalties, which creates a strong incentive to honor advance reservations, but also means that same-day walk-up requests may be deprioritized. Additionally, the new regulations introduce standardized training requirements for airline personnel who assist passengers with disabilities, including new protocols for helping passengers who use walkers, canes, or other mobility aids navigate through the airport, board and deplane from aircraft and transfer to and from aisle chairs when necessary. The regulations also require airports to install additional accessibility features, including improved signage for visually impaired travelers, enhanced audio announcements in accessible formats, additional seating, and gate areas specifically reserved for elderly and disabled passengers, and improved lighting in key travel areas. All major airports with more than 10,000 annual enplanements must be in compliance with these new accessibility standards by January 1, 2026. And mid-sized airports have until July 1, 2026 to achieve full compliance. The fourth change that many seniors have not heard about involves new requirements related to medical devices, medications, and health-related items that travelers bring through airport security. The TSA has updated its policies for 2026 regarding how passengers with medical conditions, implanted devices, or specialized health equipment are screened. For seniors who are statistically more likely to have pacemakers, artificial joints, insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, oxygen equipment, or other medical devices, These changes are particularly important under the new protocols. Travelers with implanted or attached medical devices that may trigger metal detectors or advanced imaging technology are strongly encouraged to obtain a TSA notification card before traveling. This card, which can be requested from your doctor or downloaded from the TSA website, explains your specific medical device or condition and helps streamline the screening process. While having a notification card does not exempt you from screening, it does give TSA officers important context that can make the screening process faster and less intrusive. For seniors who travel with oxygen concentrators, nebulizers, or other breathing equipment, the rules for bringing these devices on aircraft have also been clarified and in some cases tightened for 2026. Portable oxygen concentrators that are FAA approved are still permitted on most commercial flights, but you must notify the airline when booking your flight. Obtain a physician's statement or letter of medical necessity. Carry documentation of the device's make and model number. Ensure the device's battery has sufficient charge for the full flight duration plus a reasonable buffer, and be prepared to demonstrate the operation of the device to TSA officers if requested. Airlines are required to accommodate passengers with medical oxygen needs but must be notified in advance. And some airlines have specific forms that must be completed before the flight. Failing to notify your airline and carry appropriate documentation could result in being denied boarding, even if your oxygen concentrator is otherwise permitted. The fifth significant change for 2026 that affects senior travelers involves airline boarding procedures and the boarding group system. Several major US airlines are implementing new boarding procedures in 2026 that affect passengers who need extra time to board, including many senior travelers. Previously, most airlines offered early boarding as an accommodation for passengers who self-identified as needing additional time to board safely, often announced simply as passengers who need extra time or assistance. Under the new 2026 boarding procedures at many airlines, this accommodation is being restructured. Passengers who need extra time to board must now formally request this accommodation when checking in, either online during the check-in process or at the airport check-in counter. Simply showing up at the gate and asking for extra time may no longer be automatically accommodated at many airports. When you check in online, you'll typically see an option to indicate that you need additional time to board or that you have a disability or mobility limitation. Selecting this option flags your boarding pass so that gate agents are aware of your needs and can accommodate you during the early boarding group. If you check in at the airport, ask the check-in agent specifically to note that you need extra time to board and ensure this is documented on your reservation. The sixth change that seniors need to be aware of relates to changes in airport dining, shopping, and waiting areas that have been redesigned in many major airports as part of 2026 renovation and modernization projects. Many of the nation's busiest airports, including major hubs in Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York, and Miami, are undergoing significant infrastructure updates in 2026, which means that the layout you're familiar with from previous trips may have changed substantially. Gates have moved. Restaurants and shops may be in different locations, and walking distances between terminals or between security checkpoints and gates may have changed. For senior travelers who may be sensitive to walking long distances, these changes can create unexpected physical challenges. Before your next trip, visit your departure airport's website to review current terminal maps and get updated information about gate locations, transportation options between terminals, such as interterminal trams or buses, and the locations of seating areas, restrooms, and services for elderly and disabled passengers. The seventh important change for 2026 involves international travel documentation requirements that affect senior Americans flying abroad. While much of the focus has been on domestic changes, seniors who travel internationally need to be aware of updated passport requirements and entry regulations at popular destinations. The United States passport validity requirement, which states that your passport must be valid for at least 6 months beyond your planned date of return, is now being strictly enforced at US departure airports. This means that if you're flying from New York to Paris on March 15, 2026, and your passport expires on August 20th, 2026, you actually do not have the required 6 months of validity beyond your return date if you're returning in April, and you may be denied boarding. Many seniors have passports that are approaching expiration or that are already expired, and the passport renewal process, while not overly complicated, does take time. The State Department currently reports processing times of 10 to 13 weeks for routine renewal applications, and expedited processing takes 5 to 7 weeks and costs an additional $60. If you need a passport urgently, you may be able to schedule an appointment at a regional passport agency, but appointments are limited. Now, let's talk about what you need to do right now to prepare for these 2026 airport changes and ensure your next flight goes smoothly. First, and most urgently, check whether your driver's license is Real ID compliant by looking for the gold or black star in the upper right corner. If it doesn't have that star, visit your state's Department of Motor Vehicles website to find out how to get a Real ID compliant license. Most states now offer Real ID as a standard option when renewing your license, but you may need to bring additional documentation to the DMV, including proof of identity, proof of your social security number, and 2 proofs of state residency. Second, if you don't already have a current US passport and you travel or plan to travel internationally, apply for or renew your passport now before you need it urgently. Even if you're only planning domestic travel, having a valid passport gives you a backup form of identification that is always Real ID compliant and accepted at all airports. Third, if you're not enrolled in TSA PreCheck, seriously consider applying now. The expedited screening experience is significantly more comfortable and less physically demanding than standard screening, and the new dedicated senior lanes being implemented in 2026 make it even more beneficial for older travelers. To apply, visit the TSA website, complete the online application, and then schedule an in-person appointment at an enrollment center near you. Bring an acceptable form of identification, your biographical information, and the $85 application fee. Fourth, when booking your next flight, make sure to formally request wheelchair assistance or extra time to board if you need either of these accommodations. Do this at the time of booking rather than waiting until you arrive at the airport, because under the new 2026 regulations, advance requests are prioritized and better accommodated. Fifth, if you travel with any medical devices, medications, or health-related equipment, download the TSA notification card form from the TSA website and complete it with your doctor's input before your next flight. Carry this card with your boarding pass and other travel documents so it's easily accessible during security screening. If you travel with an oxygen concentrator or other breathing equipment, contact your airline directly well in advance to understand their specific requirements and complete any necessary forms. Sixth, before any trip, visit the website of your departure airport to review current terminal maps. Check for any construction or renovation projects that might affect your route through the airport, and identify the locations of senior assistance desks, accessible restrooms, and seating areas. Allow extra time on your travel day to account for any changes in layout or procedures. Seventh, if you're traveling internationally in 2026, check your passport expiration date right now. If it expires within the next year, or if you have less than 6 months of validity beyond your planned return date from any international trip, initiate the renewal process immediately to avoid being denied boarding. Let me also share some additional tips that experienced senior travelers have found helpful when navigating the new 2026 airport environment. Arrive at the airport earlier than you think necessary, at least 2 and 1.2 to 3 hours before domestic flights and at least 3 and 1.2 to 4 hours before international flights to give yourself plenty of time to navigate any unexpected changes or delays in the security and boarding process. Wear comfortable, easy-to-remove shoes on travel days because even with TSA PreCheck, you may occasionally be directed to a standard screening lane and asked to remove your footwear. Pack your carry-on bags strategically with your medications, medical devices, identification documents, and boarding pass all easily accessible. Consider downloading your airline's mobile app and using electronic boarding passes, which can make the check-in and boarding process smoother. If you're traveling with a companion or caregiver, make sure they're aware of all the new procedures and requirements as well, so they can help you navigate any challenges. Thank you so much for watching US Immigration Intel today. If you found this comprehensive guide to the 2026 airport changes affecting seniors aged 70 and older helpful, important, and genuinely valuable for your travel planning. Please give this video a thumbs up and share it widely with other seniors, with adult children who have elderly parents who travel, with caregivers, and with anyone else in your life who needs to know about these important changes before their next flight. We're here at US Immigration Intel every week, bringing you the latest and most important information about travel regulations, airport changes, identification requirements, immigration updates, and everything that affects your ability to travel safely, comfortably, and confidently. Subscribe to US Immigration Intel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications by clicking that bell icon so you never miss critical updates that could affect your travel plans or your rights as a traveler. Stay informed, prepare in advance, know your rights, and I'll see you in the next video with more essential information. Safe travels and take care.